What do you think is something that event marketers are facing as a challenge right now?
I think the demographics are changing. The old guard is leaving. The people in my age group are aging out, and you're getting a new flow of people, a Gen Z, to generalize about it for a moment. But how do you appeal to them? Do you appeal to their feeling about brands, which is they want brands to be socially responsible? They want to be part of the story, not the object of a story they're being told. How do you cope with that? And right now, I think there's a lot of confusion about how best to do it. Because with every new generation, there's likes and dislikes, and you've got to grasp it, right? So what worked 30 years ago? Well, it worked really well 30 years ago, but it does not necessarily work now. And that's what I see people struggling with. How to appeal to an oncoming generation without necessarily alienating an older generation either.
Absolutely.
I spend a lot of time now like networking and talking to other people, and having really only been an exhibitor for 3 years, I try to meet as many people as I can that do my job. And I feel like we always come back to the very same topic is ROI. But it's actually before the ROI process. I think one of the biggest struggles that people have that do what I do is really feeling like your KPIs are concrete, because you can't measure your ROI unless your KPIs are dialed in.
Right.
And I think it's one of the things that Matt always says about the cost of doing business. And it's so much more than that.
Sure.
And I think the biggest struggle is people like myself impressing upon their leadership teams what a valuable and strong marketing channel trade show is, and being able to really get buy-in. And so I feel like it starts with that alignment and that KPI, which leads to the ever long quest of the ROI capture.
We talk a lot about that in our framework and on the show as well, but it's really true. You're so incredibly valuable in what you do because it does drive ROI, but it needs to be measured, but
Right.
it also needs to go back to what leadership and the stakeholders see as value. And so it's
Right.
like getting the opportunity to just have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Learn what's important to them. What are the metrics that they're measuring? What do they care about? And then going back and saying, hey, this is why we should be at this event. This is where our audience is. This is how we expect it to be a success.
Yeah. And it's an
then going back
opportunity for someone like me to educate people who simply look at trade shows, look at badge scans, and say, okay, well, how many sales do we make off the badge scans? Well, some companies like mine, our sales pipeline is 18, 24 months long. And so it can't just be about, we scanned this badge, it was a strong lead, we converted the opportunity, we made a sale. There's so much more value in there in building that brand awareness, in the brand loyalty and that customer retention. A lot of people that come see us are already customers of ours that are there to learn about what's next and what's new. And a lot of people in a leadership position, in a marketing or sales position, will simply look at a trade show as a means of selling. And there's so much more value in it. And it's really getting a seat at that table and being able to tell that leadership team, like, hey, there's so much more at play here that we could be really emphasizing.
And taking advantage of,
And it's hard. But that all leads back to building those KPIs. If your KPI is scan the badge, make the sale, it's a very cut and dry transaction, and it really should be more than that. There's so much more value in it.
I think cross collaboration with stakeholders. I think that this has always been the case in events. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody thinks it's fun. Everybody is, oh, I've got this great idea. And what's difficult for event marketers is learning how to allow those people to feel like they have a voice, right, in what you're doing, but at the same time, evaluate all of those things in the context of what you're trying to achieve, what your KPIs are and what your objectives are. So just because somebody comes in and says, hey, we need to have a putting green in our booth, what is that putting green going to accomplish? How is that going to feed into our objectives? And P.S., that's really cliche, and people haven't done that in 20 years.
I know.
So, but we don't talk about that part, right? But I think that's really everyone's biggest challenge is you've got to balance all of those different voices and still be strong enough to drive the thing that's going to be most effective.
Yeah. Well, because even sometimes, like, we try to chat with people and they're like, okay, that sounds great, but I know my stakeholders won't buy into that, right? So it's kind of taking little pieces and being like, okay, how do I apply this to my company, or how can I do that within the parameters that I'm in?
Selling it, telling a story, backing up your recommendations with data is something that's really important. So if you're going into an event and you say you're introducing a new product or something that's going to solve a problem in that industry, how can you identify thought leadership opportunities that will allow you to get that message across? The efforts that you put into a show have to align with what the goals are. So if you don't want to have gimmicks in your booth, if your goal is to attract targeted customers, a gimmick is going to attract a lot of unqualified people. Right. So that's, I think, the thing that they have to marry. We have to marry.
I think, proving ROI is something that we're always having to do. It's how are we leading with data? We all have to prove ROI. We all have to justify what we do, but how do we get better at creating those experiences or those activations that point towards the data? Ultimately, data will set us free. And so if we have that ability to tell the story as we're working with our C-suite or our internal leadership and let them know, hey, this is, what we were able to accomplish while we were at the event. And, here's the pipeline that we've created. It's data's always front of mind.
Staffing. That seemed to be a problem?
Staffing is one of those.
Or is it
it's always a problem. I was in a session earlier with Intel, and they were talking about how they have the same issues. They're working with other agencies to help them, and they've built a great program. So, not to say that our sales team isn't doing what they're doing, but it's always a learning opportunity for them, and to give them the guardrails and say, hey, you're doing great, but here's what we could be doing better. There's a little bit of an improvement that they have to continue what they're doing, because ultimately when we're at the events, we're all working towards that collective goal. And so how do we incentivize our sales team through reminders or trainings or incentives? Hey, we want to make sure that we are here for a reason and we're having those quality conversations. Because the last thing we want is a customer to come to our booth or at the event and they see us on our phone.
Sustainability, of course, is huge right now.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to think of different ways to contribute to that aspect. But, that's not new. That's been around for a while, but it's becoming very important now.
Even sustainability for us, too. We have to give out, reports to some of our clients so they can go back to their stakeholders showing that. And, I know, some flooring companies have started to recycle their flooring. If you send it back to recycle it. I know graphics is trying to be a big push about how can we do graphics, right? Because those are kind of a big investment that people make, and then, what happens to it. So,
absolutely. Yeah, sustainability is huge.
Oh, definitely. Organization and tech, often the deficiency of tech or not enough tech to meet our needs. I think a lot of us are familiar with project management systems that maybe the rest of our company uses, but they are not quite suited for the unique needs of an event marketer who may have 200 things on their checklist, but then also has a whole arena of their job that involves the rest of the team. And so that can be put on a project management platform, but you're almost working two jobs there.
That makes perfect sense, because there's all of these little details, right, that make an event go, that make it matter, make it memorable and a really good experience. That a project management tool is good, but it doesn't always you've got to keep the rest of the teams organized and focused on their action items, and it can be really hard to merge the two. That's very true. Very interesting.
Yeah, so I definitely think that tech is a challenge nowadays. Too much put into the job description of, an event manager or an event marketer. I feel like so many of us in the busy season are running on fumes because people don't recognize, if they haven't done it before, they don't recognize all of these other things that we're doing.
And the workload is very detailed, right?
Yeah. And that could be calculating cubic weight on one hand, but then on the other hand, I'm, putting on my heels to host a cocktail party, and I'm picking out colors, and I know color theory.
Sure.
So it's a lot of different skill sets that are blended together. And I think that's a challenge to stay balanced.
Sustainability is such a hot topic right now, as I'm sure that and market too. So how do you guys stay up on that?
Our owner has been on the forefront of sustainability since before it became, something that was a hot topic, right? It used to be in this industry, even 5 years ago, you would always hear it's oh, nobody cares. And I would think, I don't think that's true, right? There's a generational difference there. I think that some of the veterans in the industry, they maybe don't see the value, but certainly younger people understand it, and something that we all kind of grew up with. And especially now, so many corporations have sustainability targets they have to meet.
Yes.
And you don't want them eating into marketing events like this to make the sustainability targets. So you have to make the booth building experience more sustainable so that they're meeting their sustainability targets, and it adds to the overall health of our industry. And so, aluminum by its very nature is already sustainable. It can be recycled, and our frames last 30 plus years, right?
Oh, wow.
And when you're done with them, you can repurpose them other things, or you can recycle them. By their very nature, they're recycled. But we took it a step further, right? We had a company take a look at the process, figure out where we could be more sustainable, and as a result, we were able to reduce our carbon footprint by 9,000 metric tons.
I think challenge-wise is I've already realized, I've only been in this role and with trade shows for just over 3 months now, so I'm still very fresh, but I think driving those results and understanding, okay, how do we work with the sellers? How do we communicate the importance of getting those meetings driven and being engaged on site and being excited? So we actually work with a partner who helps drive that in booth. So it's not always just our sellers, but trying to understand where we can improve and drive those results.
It's very complicated and there's many levels.
Sure.
Because I think everyone that's in the event space and event marketers included, that we have new people and a lot of new people. I mean, before the pandemic, the average age of our workforce was 53 to 58 years old with 30 years experience. Now 40% is, looking at 1 to 3 years experience. It's very important, number one, to identify the skill sets and be able to talk to people who are new in the industry and provide a mentoring experience to be able to sponsor them and help guide them up through their pathway and into leadership roles. It's not only on the supplier side, it's on the brand side as well.
Sure, absolutely.
So being able to, number one, definitely don't assume anything when you're speaking in your role. Identify who is the person that you're talking to, what's their background, how many years experience do they have, and what is their center of influence? What are the resources that they can bring to the table, and then move forward and develop those partnerships in a really meaningful way. We also talked about, work-life balance at a roundtable that we were at yesterday. And I think that the younger generations have really significantly impacted the workforce role in our lives. One of the things that's important is, I think, that the American work ethic and the American ingenuity is really what makes our country great. Working 2.5 days with no sleep shouldn't be a badge of honor, which it was many years ago. So now we need to find that common ground where it makes sense. So we could still work, 3 weeks without a day off. However, then that 4th week, we have to think about having a weekend off. And maybe it's not 2 days or 18 hours, maybe it's 12 hours. And I certainly have talked to many people who are saying, well, if you make us a 9-to-5 job, then it's not going to be our work anymore.
Right.
So it's some sort of balance.
There's no real 9-to-5 in events, right? Because events are in the evenings, they're all day long, they're all weekend long. And I think that you're right. It's about finding that balance and that self-care, to take breaks. You shouldn't just be succeeding or surviving your event, right? And feeling revived after those events is really important. So that's really great advice to focus on that. And I do agree that's a huge challenge.
So we had a thought leader session this morning, and it was really getting people to understand the why behind the measurements, because a lot of people don't understand where that why comes from. And that's really important to have that fundamental background so that you know where that's coming from. A lot of corporations, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, large companies, they have a net zero event, net zero commitment, and events are part of those net zero commitments. And so we really need to get that baseline of the events so that we can make strategies and design recommendations around getting to net zero.
That's awesome. So what would be some of those, like strategy and design?
Sure. So really working with all your supply chain, everything from a decorator to food and beverage to the venue itself, looking at how you design the event around that. Like what food choices
okay.
are being offered, what waste, where's the waste going? We did a tour of the back of the house yesterday just to understand the waste piece of it, which is a huge thing in a trade show situation. Even the carpet we stand on is really important piece. We don't want that living in a landfill because that's just going to keep the landfill growing. And we have a big imprint as an industry. We really need to educate people on how to lessen that imprint.
I think it's just awareness, right? Everybody thinks, okay, like I just got to go to these shows and it just is what it is, right? I don't know what else is out there. So that's why trade shows like this, where we're introducing you to a whole bunch of new solutions that can supercharge your trade show experience and get a lot more out of it, makes a big difference for them. And oftentimes it's just having a different type of mindset. Oftentimes people kind of view trade shows in some light as maybe a cost center for them. All right. And so for a lot of our customers that come to us, they've changed that mindset into more of an investment mindset. How much more can I put into it? Knowing that it is a very big cost on our line item for our show list or even our pipeline generation. But if I pour more into this, how much more can I get out of it?
We actually just started 2 years ago using ROI. I had been trying to get that into the mix for a really long time. And finally, with the backing, they started to look at that and realize the value of it. And now the programs that we're doing in 2025 are based on partly those ROI results. They're realizing that value.
Music to my ears. I love talking about this. So a lot of event marketers are facing this challenge in bridging the gap from what you want to do and how you can prove the value of event through technology, through measurement of ROI, and presenting that to leadership, right? And implementing these new strategies. Sometimes you just don't know how to do that.
Collecting the data is half the challenge in so many ways. A lot of times it's making sense of that data in a way that where customers don't have to build their own data lakes or put their own machine learning pipelines in order to make sense of it. So we try to automate so much of that for them, and that's really one of our goals. I mean, we're users of these tools and these technologies ourselves. Our field sales team uses it. So I think it's incredibly critical that we not just capture it, but also present it in a way that makes sense. Track, like you said, that customer journey all the way from first interaction all the way to closure. Also, how do you know, based on previous interactions? We had somebody like, I don't get visibility for how many customers visited me in the last event, for example, right? So if somebody has come to your booth multiple times through multiple events, these are strong buying signals. So that's why we're developing that real-time engine, real-time event engine within our company. So this way, as somebody's walking up to you, as you scan them, then you have all the relevant information at your fingertips so you can take it to the next steps, especially talking points, historical information, context from all interactions they've done. But also as an exhibitor, how are you doing compared to everybody else? How effective was your marketing material? Which piece was actually most relevant, most utilized, most clicked on, which I think is very powerful information, so you can kind of keep down that trend or investigate why that's different.
A lot of that is working with the sales team on the importance of the meetings and however we can help with the research aspect, prospecting, that type of thing, finding out who's going to be at the show, just really trying to work together on that. Sometimes that can be difficult sometimes, but it is sometimes just even working on your own and providing that to them anyways. These are the people that I see are going to be at the show, and these are who I recommend you reach out to. These are the resources that are going to be available to you. For instance, if they have an app, here are the scripts that you can use to be able to message them and that type of thing. Especially, I think I still get questions about, can we buy the list? There's still that thinking. So it is a matter of reminding them there's new ways. You can't do that anymore always. Sure. And there's new ways of communicating. And so just really working with them on providing them the resources to be able to, to access those people and set up those meetings, because that is where the magic's going to happen for them.
Telling the story. Yeah. So we give a certificate out for every client that participates in the recycling efforts, and to say how much carbon reduction they're actually doing and showing it and proving it and telling that story is the hardest thing, because it's like, what is going green mean? What is sustainability? Well, it's diverting your materials that you're not going to use anymore and make a new life out of it and tell that story. So we give a certificate so they can see how much square footage they've saved from the landfill and how many metric tons of CO2 they've saved and how much coal they've saved in electrical and energy.
It's funny, when I first started 2 years ago, I found out that we weren't even scanning in the booth. We scanned for education to submit their hours, but we weren't scanning on who attended our booth. I had no idea how to prepare. How do you prepare for an event if you have no idea how many people actually come through? Like, with swag or anything, or if it's being even profitable or it's being successful. So I have now implemented, I use iCapture from Cvent. And all my sales reps or anyone from my company has the ability to scan at any show, regardless if they offer a lead routing, service. They'll be able to scan, and it automatically goes right into our CRM. And it basically qualifies the lead as, a hot lead, or, do we need immediate, reach out. And then that lets that sales rep know. They get an email notifying with the comment on the conversation, how it went, and what they need to do for the next steps. That's one way I've been doing our tracking. Another way is I'm also using Explory and MaxB. It's a system that helps you compare and analyze all your events against each other. And so, because, I do so many shows, and it's like, you hear, we always go to this show because we've always attended this show. Well, that's awesome. But, we need more than just that. It's okay to say, we do attend because, our competitors attend. Okay, that's another reason. But I really wanted to be able to grade each of my events, and this program allows me to input my objectives, strategic, sales, you name it, and then it rates it through the algorithm and gives it a grade. And then you can do different tiers of events, so that you're not, obviously grading your tier 1 against your tier 3, because they're totally different budgets, totally different concepts. And then it helps me articulate, okay, maybe do we need more money in this one show, or maybe we don't need to spend as much money in this other show. So by the end of this year, I will have a clear picture to present to my C-level how we're really doing in our trade show program, because as of right now, I can go off the opportunities, but it's more than just opportunities. It's the relationships you build. It's, you're not just going there just always to do selling. You're doing brand awareness, you're doing thought leadership, and this really will help me show and articulate the value that I'm bringing to the trade show program.